The open ocean does not feel dangerous at first. It feels empty. That's what makes it terrifying. Ask any sailor who's stood watch at night miles from land, and they will tell you the same thing. The surface can look calm. The instruments can read clean. The sky can be clear from horizon to horizon. And yet something feels wrong. Not panic, not fear. Something colder. Something deeper. The sense that the water beneath you is not vacant, but occupied. The U.S. Navy learned long ago that the sea is not just a highway. It is a battle space. It always has been. Long before missiles and satellites, ships crossed water, knowing that danger rarely announced itself. There are no walls at sea, no trenches, no high ground. Just a thin hull floating over miles of dark that have never belonged to us. To civilians, open water looks peaceful. To sailors, it means exposure. Every vibration travels. Every sound echoes downward. You are never alone out there. You are only unchallenged. Before we move on, if stories like this pull you in, if the unknown beneath the surface unsettles you, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. And Merry Christmas to everyone watching. Enjoy the story and have a great day ahead. From the first day aboard, sailors are taught exactly what to fear. Submarines that leave no wake. Mines that wait longer than wars last. Torpedoes that arrive faster than thought. These threats have names, manuals, countermeasures. They show up on charts. They make sense. The Navy understands them. But sometimes the sea introduces something that does not fit the lesson plan. Something that never appears on threat charts. Something that doesn't behave like a weapon or an animal we recognize. Veteran sailors talk about it quietly, usually years later. A strange pressure in the chest while standing watch. A sudden stillness in the water where life should be moving. Dolphins vanishing without reason. Sharks scattering instead of circling. Once, a lookout described seeing a shape beneath the surface that moved parallel to the ship for several seconds before fading into the dark. No splash, no breach, just mass. Too wide, too slow, and then gone. It was written off as fatigue. It always is. Some threats don't fire weapons. They just wait below you. Modern naval warfare is built on certainty. Sonar paints the dark. Radar turns distance into data. Acoustic systems listen for anything that does not belong. Every contact is categorized. Mechanical, biological, environmental. Whales are familiar. Their calls roll deep and slow through the water. Sharks show up smaller, quicker, erratic. Schools of fish scatter like noise. Operators train for years to recognize these patterns until they become instinct. They are taught one rule above all others. Trust the instruments, not your gut. Instinct lies. Sensors don't. So when something unusual appears, it is dismissed first. A bad return. Overlapping echoes. A shadow created by the seafloor. The ocean is noisy, and noise creates ghosts. Sailors are trained not to chase ghosts. You log it. You move on. But certainty begins to fracture when the same contact appears again. When it holds depth instead of drifting. When it moves with intention instead of randomness. When it leaves the area and later returns unchanged. Large biological anomalies are usually discarded immediately. Too big means impossible. Impossible means error. Reports become careful. Language softens. Numbers are rounded down. Conversations move off open channels. Because the Navy expects threats to behave like machines or known animals. It does not expect something that behaves like neither. Something too large to classify. Too quiet to challenge. Too consistent to ignore. There are a handful of cases, spread across decades, where sailors reported the same unsettling detail. not an attack, not a breach, just the feeling that something immense passed beneath them. A pressure wave felt through steel, a shadow that blocked the stars reflecting on the water, and then nothing. No alarms, no follow-up, just silence. 1 anomaly is a mistake. 2 is coincidence. 3 becomes uncomfortable, unless they keep showing up. July 1945. The war was nearing its end, though the men aboard the USS Indianapolis had no way of knowing it. They had just completed one of the most classified missions of the entire conflict and were finally making their way through open Pacific water. The night the torpedoes struck, there was no drawn-out battle, no chance to prepare. Steel tore open. Fire raced through compartments. Power vanished. Within minutes, the ship was dying. Men were thrown from bunks, burned by steam, blinded by smoke, and forced upward toward darkness and noise. Orders came fast and sharp, then one command cut through everything else: abandon ship. There was no time to argue. The sea swallowed the vessel quickly, leaving hundreds of sailors scattered across black water, clinging to debris, life vests, and one another. At first, the terror came from above and within. The sun burned skin raw. Thirst hollowed minds. Men drifted in and out of delirium as hours stretched into days. Then the sharks arrived. Oceanic white-ups, bold and patient, drawn by blood and movement. They circled the groups, bumping legs, testing edges, taking the wounded and the isolated. This part of the story is known, documented, and taught. Sharks behave predictably. They feed where opportunity exists. The sailors understood that much. What they did not understand was what happened next. Without warning, the sharks began to withdraw. Fins that had cut the surface steadily simply vanished. Feeding stopped. The water around the survivors went strangely quiet. Men noticed immediately, because predators do not abandon easy meals without reason. Survivors later described a sensation beneath them that was difficult to explain. Not fear, not panic, but pressure. A deep rolling force that passed under their bodies and through their chests, as if something massive had moved below the surface. At night, some men claimed they felt the water lift slightly, then settle again. Others spoke of a low groaning sound, not sharp or violent, but heavy and distant, like the ocean itself was straining. It was not something you heard with your ears so much as something you felt in your bones. Men began whispering that whatever had arrived was not hunting the way sharks did. It was not frantic. It was not desperate. It was deliberate. Then the removals began. These were not the chaotic attacks the men had already endured. There was no prolonged struggle, no splashing panic. Sailors would be present one moment and gone the next. Taken cleanly. In some cases, bodies surfaced later bearing a single enormous wound, not torn or shredded, but removed in one decisive bite. Survivors who saw these injuries said they did not resemble any shock attack they recognized. The wounds were too large, too clean, too final. Most disturbing of all, the sharks did not immediately return. They lingered at a distance, darting in only after long periods of stillness, behaving less like hunters and more like scavengers waiting for permission. As the days dragged on, exhaustion, dehydration, and madness took their toll. Men argued quietly. Some prayed. Some refused to speak at all. No one wanted to say out loud what many were thinking. When rescue finally arrived, only a fraction of the original crew was still alive. The official explanation came swiftly and cleanly. Exposure, dehydration, shark attacks. The event was reduced to categories that could be understood, documented, and taught. But among the survivors, there remained a shared understanding that something else had been present during those days in the water. Something large enough to change the behavior of apex predators. Something that did not belong in any report. When survivors later tried to explain what they felt and saw, Their words were met with polite dismissal. Trauma was the explanation offered first. Severe dehydration causes hallucinations. Prolonged sun exposure alters perception. Group panic distorts memory. These were not unreasonable conclusions. The Navy had no interest in amplifying fear or encouraging speculation about unknown threats. Sharks were familiar. Sharks made sense. They fit existing knowledge and training doctrine. Anything beyond that opened questions no one was prepared to answer. Survivors who insisted there had been something larger were quietly ignored or ridiculed. Their accounts smoothed down in retellings. Their language softened until nothing unfamiliar remained. This was not a cover-up in the traditional sense. There were no secret files stamped forbidden, no direct orders to silence witnesses. Instead, the story was narrowed. Details that did not fit were excluded. Pressure became panic. Silence became shock. Size became exaggeration. The Navy didn't deny the suffering of the men. It simply removed the parts that did not fit into an acceptable explanation. In doing so, the incident became survivable for history. But for those who lived through it, the memory never fully settled. They carried with them the certainty that something had interrupted the natural order that week. Something powerful enough to make sharks retreat. Something that waited beneath them in the dark. And something that, once felt, could never truly be forgotten. By the mid-1990s, the war had shifted from open gunfire to quiet presence, and most watches at sea felt more like habit than danger. A U.S. Navy petty officer stood the forecastle watch during a routine transit through the Indian Ocean. Eyes sweeping water and horizon while the ship cut a steady line through black-blue swells. There was nothing unusual in the air. No weather change, no radio chatter, no threat condition raised. Dolphins had been pacing the ship for hours, riding pressure waves, surfacing and diving in clean arcs that every sailor recognizes as normal. Their movement was playful, tight, predictable, the kind of sight that makes a long watch feel shorter. The petty officer leaned on the rail, tracking them idly until the pattern broke. One moment the pod was there, tight and synchronized. The next, it shattered. Dolphins veered hard in multiple directions, some breaching violently, others disappearing beneath the hull in blind flight. Animals that had followed the ship calmly for miles were suddenly running. The petty officer felt it before he fully understood it, a change in the water's behavior that made the skin on his arms tighten. The dolphins did not return. Instead, the surface ahead of the ship bulged, not like a wave, but like something rising deliberately from below. A dorsal fin broke the water, slow and controlled, and possibly tall, holding its line without spray or thrash. It did not slice like a shark's fin usually does. It lifted, revealed itself, then continued forward as if the ship was irrelevant. The men on watch froze. No one shouted. Training tells you that if you cannot identify a contact, you observe. Then the water erupted again, not with chaos, but with precision. One dolphin surfaced, then vanished, taken whole in a single upward motion that left no debris, no prolonged struggle, just a sudden absence where life had been. The sea closed over it quietly. Alarms were not sounded, but reports moved quickly through internal channels. Moments later, sonar began tracking the contact as it passed beneath the vessel. There was no engine noise, no prop wash, no cavitation trail, nothing mechanical to explain the return. The object held depth, then descended sharply, moving faster than expected for any known biological contact of that size. When the preliminary measurement came back, the petty officer heard the number repeated twice, as if saying it again might change it. Over 80 feet, longer than the ship's beam was wide. The track remained clean and steady, not erratic, not panicked. Whatever it was did not flee. It did not accelerate away from the hull. It simply moved on its course, unbothered, as if nothing in the ocean had ever challenged it. Whatever it was, it moved like it had nothing to fear. No log entry captured the moment fully, but everyone on watch understood that night had quietly rewritten what they believed controlled the deep, beneath the hull and beyond charts and doctrine itself. The sonar operator who monitored the contact did not panic, because panic has no place in a combat information center. Sonar does not exaggerate size easily. Returns distort under certain conditions, but experienced operators know the difference between noise and mass. Biological contacts have irregular edges, variable speeds, and inconsistent profiles. Mechanical contacts announce themselves through rhythm and repetition. This return did neither. It stayed coherent across multiple pings, held a defined shape, and moved with deliberate consistency. The depth profile was the most unsettling part. It descended far beyond the normal operating range of known sharks, then climbed again without the gradual curve expected from air-breathing animals. No whale behaves like that. No shark recorded in modern data behaves like that. The operator logged what he saw, carefully, neutrally, using language designed to remove emotion from observation. He did not speculate, but he noticed patterns repeating across ranges, depths, and speeds in ways training manuals never prepared him to explain without breaking protocol or procedure during a routine watch cycle that night. Operators are trained not to speculate, yet they are also trained to remember. In the days that followed, quiet conversations circled the incident, never official, never recorded. Similar returns had appeared before, briefly, always dismissed as sensor error or biological clutter. This time felt different because the data aligned too cleanly. Speed matched size. Depth matched mass. Movement suggested intent, not reaction. The contact showed no sign of evasion, no response to the ship's presence, no indication it recognized danger at all. When analysts reviewed the data later, they reduced it to anomaly and moved on. But the operators kept the pattern in mind, not as proof, not as belief, but as a question that refused to settle. If something could move through monitored waters like that, unseen and unchallenged, then the ocean was still hiding rules the Navy had never written. And once you notice a pattern in the deep, it becomes harder to believe it only appeared once, especially when older reports begin to echo in uncomfortable ways across decades and oceans worldwide. The incident that unsettled the scientists did not begin with panic or speculation, but with routine data arriving exactly as expected, until it didn't. A mature great white shark had been tagged as part of a long-running tracking project tied to institutions that regularly shared findings with U.S. Navy research divisions. The shark was healthy, its movements predictable, its depth profile normal for a large pelagic predator. Then, without warning, the tag recorded a rapid vertical descent straight down the edge of a continental shelf. This was not a hunting dive. It was not evasive behavior. It was a sudden plunge far faster than a great white typically performs. And as the depth increased, something impossible happened. The surrounding temperature began to rise. Instead of growing colder as pressure increased, the tag registered warmth consistent with the interior of a living organism. The device continued transmitting. For 8 days, it logged stable internal temperatures, gradual depth changes, and slow horizontal movement. The shark was gone. The tag had not failed. It had been swallowed. Researchers attempted to remain clinical, forcing the data into the narrowest explanation that would not fracture accepted biology. Cannibalism was proposed. A larger great white was blamed. The report language softened words like impossible into unlikely and unlikely into unresolved. But internally, the fear lingered. The movement pattern was wrong. The depth range was wrong. The sustained internal temperature was wrong. Whatever consumed that shark carried the tag effortlessly, without injury, without stress, without urgency. The conclusion written on paper said one thing. The data itself said another. And the data did not care what anyone believed. As analysts began quietly comparing records, another pattern emerged, one that did not rely on instruments but on absence. Shark populations in multiple regions showed sudden behavioral changes. Feeding zones were abandoned. Long-established migration routes bent sharply away from certain deep-water corridors. Tagged sharks accelerated out of areas they should have dominated. These were not environmental responses. There were no temperature shifts, no prey collapse, no human interference sufficient to explain the movement. Sharks do not flee lightly. As apex predators, their confidence defines their role. They investigate threats. They test boundaries. They do not surrender territory unless something larger asserts dominance. In documented cases, sharks abandon kills when orcas arrive. They scatter when a larger shark intrudes. But these retreats were broader, faster, and more complete. Entire regions went quiet. Fishermen noticed the silence before scientists did. Navy crews logged it without comment. Dolphins changed course. Surface life thinned. The water felt empty in places where it never had before. And beneath it all, sonar operators occasionally noticed something they were trained not to dwell on. Large, slow contacts moving too deep, too smooth, too consistent to be debris. Operators did not speculate. They never do. But patterns were observed, repeated, quietly discussed, then dismissed. Apex predators do not abandon food, territory, and instinct unless the hierarchy has shifted. What unsettled those who noticed was not aggression, but restraint. Whatever moved beneath those waters did not chase vessels. It did not announce itself. It did not leave wreckage or evidence that demanded attention. It simply passed through, and the ecosystem responded by getting out of the way. That response echoed survivor accounts from decades earlier. Descriptions once attributed to trauma and dehydration. The same pressure sensations. The same reports of sharks vanishing suddenly. The same feeling of mass beneath the surface, moving with certainty, not hunger. The Navy did not cover these things up. There were no orders, no erased logs, no sealed files marked forbiddens. Instead, the system did what it always does when confronted with something it cannot classify. It reduced it, simplified it, rounded it down until it fit inside acceptable explanations. Sharks. Equipment error. Anything but an acknowledgement that the ocean's hierarchy might not belong to us. Because if something exists that even apex predators avoid, then control at sea becomes an illusion. And illusions are dangerous things for a military built on certainty. The U.S. Navy never publicly connected these incidents for a reason that is far less dramatic than conspiracy. Navies exist to confront enemies, not to speculate about unknown life. Their responsibility is operational control, not explanation. When something unidentified appears beneath the surface, it is treated as a navigational hazard, not a mystery to be solved. If it does not attack vessels, interfere with missions, or disrupt shipping lanes, it does not rise to the level of pursuit. Unknown biological entities create uncertainty, and uncertainty undermines confidence. Confidence is a weapon. Panic is not. So the Navy does what large institutions always do. It reduces the problem until it fits inside existing categories. Sharks explain injuries. Exposure explains confusion. Equipment error explains anomalies. Each explanation is plausible on its own. Together, they form a wall that prevents deeper questions from being asked. Classification, in this context, is not secrecy meant to hide the truth from the public. It is insulation. It keeps uncertainty from spreading through the ranks. Sailors are trained to trust their instruments and their chain of command, telling them that something vast, unidentified, and uncontrollable might share their operating environment serves no strategic purpose. There is no countermeasure, no doctrine, no engagement plan. Without a solution, the information becomes corrosive. So reports are filed conservatively, language is softened, Descriptions are stripped of emotion. What cannot be acted upon is quietly deprioritized. Silence does not mean the Navy failed to notice. It means the Navy chose stability over speculation. Inside the system, however, memory persists. Sonar operators remember contacts that behaved wrong. Officers remember briefings that ended without discussion. Scientists remember datasets that refuse to align with known models. None of this requires a cover-up. It only requires inaction. When no directive exists to investigate further, when no funding is allocated, when no mission depends on answers, anomalies are allowed to remain anomalies. The Navy does not deny the unknown. It simply does not chase it. And in doing so, it allows whatever inhabits the depths to remain exactly where it thrives, unseen, unchallenged, and unprovoked. Across decades, the accounts refused to disappear because they aligned too closely. In 1945, survivors in the Pacific described sharks abandoning the water around them, followed by immense pressure sensations and men vanishing in single, clean removals. In the 1990s, sailors on routine Indian Ocean watches reported dolphins scattering in terror, a massive dorsal fin breaking the surface, and sonar tracking a silent object longer than any known shark. Years later, scientific tag data recorded a great white diving vertically, disappearing, and transmitting from inside a warm-bodied organism for 8 days. These events occurred oceans apart, separated by time, technology, and circumstance, yet they share the same unsettling structure. The size range remains consistent, always far beyond what modern biology comfortably accepts. The behavior remains consistent as well. No frantic attacks, no wasted energy, no interest in ships themselves. The presence alone alters the environment. Apex predators retreat, prey abandons feeding grounds. The water grows quiet. What emerges is not the profile of an animal struggling to survive, but one that already dominates its space. Sailors do not speak in myths when they describe pressure felt through steel hulls or shadows pacing ships without sound. They describe displacement, mass, intent. These are not the words of fantasy. They are the words of professionals trained to observe threats. What makes the pattern unsettling is not its violence, but its restraint. Whatever this presence is, it does not announce itself. It does not leave debris. It does not linger. It passes through regions, and the ecosystem responds by getting out of the way. That response is consistent with how nature reacts to apex dominance. The Navy never needed to connect these dots officially for the pattern to exist. The pattern connects itself through repetition, the same depths, the same slow movement, the same avoidance behavior by other predators, different sailors, different decades, same shape. That consistency suggests persistence, and persistence suggests survival. The oceans where these encounters occurred shared deep trenches, cold currents, and vast regions that humans barely map. If something learned to endure by avoiding us rather than confronting us, it would look exactly like this, present only when it chooses, leaving no proof that satisfies committees or headlines, leaving behind only testimony that is quietly reduced, filed, and forgotten. The question is not whether these stories are true. The question is why they keep telling the same one. For most of modern science, extinction is treated as a clean event. A species fails to adapt, environmental pressures mount, food sources collapse, and the line ends. Fossils remain. The world moves on, but the ocean has never followed clean rules. It hides heat where cold should dominate. It preserves life where pressure should crush it. Beneath miles of water, there are thermal pockets created by tectonic activity, deep currents, and geological fractures that never surface on maps. These zones are stable, insulated, and rarely visited. Life does not thrive there in abundance, but it can endure. Dormancy, not extinction, becomes a possibility. A large predator, would not need to hunt constantly. It would need patience, slow metabolism, and access to migratory corridors when conditions allow movement. Military sonar does not see the ocean the way documentaries suggest. It does not paint a complete picture. It samples. It slices thin layers of depth, constrained by thermoclines, salinity gradients, and acoustic shadow zones. Entire volumes of water remain effectively invisible. Objects below certain depths blur into noise. Biological contacts are often filtered out by default because the system is designed to find machines, not animals. A large biological presence that moves slowly, avoids surface activity, and stays beneath complex thermal layers could exist without ever being tracked continuously, especially if it learned over time to avoid the frequencies that draw attention. Climate change introduces another variable. As polar ice retreats and deep water temperatures shift, ancient migration corridors reopen. Paths that were sealed for millennia become navigable again. If something large survived by waiting, by remaining dormant in deep insulated environments, warming oceans would not be a threat. They would be an invitation. Movement would not need to be constant, only occasional, enough to feed, enough to reposition, enough to remain unseen. This does not require a thriving population. It requires only persistence, one lineage, one survivor, or a small number spread across vast depths. No claim is necessary. Only the acknowledgement that extinction assumes visibility and the deep ocean offers none. The U.S. Navy still sails these waters. Nuclear carriers cross the same routes where sailors once vanished in silence. Submarines slip through trenches that have never been fully mapped. Sonar operators still log contacts that defy immediate classification. Contacts that appear briefly, move with purpose, then dissolve into the noise floor. Most are dismissed. Some are remembered. Sailors still stand watch at night, staring into calm water that feels occupied. They still describe moments when the sea grows quiet for no clear reason. Dolphins alter course. Birds vanish. The water seems to hold its breath. Nothing in modern naval doctrine prepares a sailor for the idea that something older than recorded history might still occupy their operating environment. There is no training slide for that, no engagement protocol. So the Navy does what it has always done. It sails, it observes, it logs what it can explain, and it reduces what it cannot. That does not mean the unknown is gone. It means it remains where it has always been, beneath the surface, beyond the charts, waiting for conditions to align. If Megalodon is extinct, then generations of sailors, scientists, and sonar operators across 80 years have all misread the same signals in the same way. They have all felt the same pressure, seen the same shadows, and recorded the same anomalies for no reason. And if that is true, then the U.S. Navy has been chasing shadows for decades. But shadows do not alter ecosystems. Shadows do not force apex predators to flee. And shadows do not leave sonar returns. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps keep these investigations going. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and whether you believe the ocean has truly given up all of its secrets. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, Encounter Archives. Over and out.